rise, former Defense Secretary William Cohen, who also is a former House and Senate member. Secretary Cohen, first, what do you think about Governor Schwarzenegger's comments?
Well, I think we should look at him and his history and his father's history and take him at his word that he understands how the rise of fascism or in his country, Nazism, came into power. We're seeing, and we did see during that period, the rise of anti-Semitism, the attempt to murder every single Jew in Europe. They succeeded in murdering 6 million, and we saw it just in last week. There were those who were wearing shirts that said 6 million's not enough. And we saw some of those marchers in Charlottesville saying, blood and soil, Jews will not replace us. So that was the rise of anti-Semitism in Europe. We're seeing the rise, certainly, or the continuation of racism in this country. And Adam Schiff, whom I admire a great deal, talked about the big lie that the president's been spreading the big lie about the fraudulent election that has taken place. There have been several big lies. The first big lie is that we've been told in this country that everyone is created equally. All men and women are created equal. That's not true. We've been told that equal justice under law. That's not true. There has never been equal justice under law in our country. And now we're seeing the white backlash, or white lash as it's called. There was an interesting book written by Carol Anderson, who wrote a book called White Rage. What is the basis of all of the rage? It's because white people have now come to the conclusion that the playing field that has been so uneven in the past is now being leveled. And when the playing field is leveled, people have to be judged based upon their character and capabilities and not upon their skin color. And that's part of the rage in which they're seeing people of all colors, religions, ethnicities, races now are able to compete. And when they are able to compete, they prevail. So it's really about racism, which goes back to the core of our country, that continue to this day, that we saw 100 years ago with the Tulsa massacres in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Same thing. Black Wall Street burned down. Why? They were prospering. They were creating jobs. And the white supremacists, so-called, burned it all down because they couldn't stand the competition. So we're seeing some of that. Much of that. Yes, go, please.
No, let me just ask you also, with all this anti-Semitism, with the racism, so much could have been done to protect the Capitol. What went wrong? You've got the Defense Department pointing fingers at D.C. officials and vice versa, and the governor of Maryland jumping in. There was a huge delay. We didn't have federal forces, including people from Homeland Security who are riot control people, in play. Do we have the same kind of siloing that we discovered after 9/11 on intelligence gathering, now having all of these different agencies and no clear lines of authority?
That's part of the problem. The other part of the problem is, what would have happened had Barack Obama been giving that speech? What would have happened if that was a Black Lives Matter that was descending on the Capitol? Do you think there would have been a lack of coordination? There wouldn't have been any dissemination of information? Look at the chain of command. When you're talking about marching on Washington and trying to carry out an insurrection, the commander-in-chief, the president of the United States, his command goes down through the Secretary of Defense, who then defers it to the Secretary of the Army. The chain of command is pretty clear. Why didn't they exercise it? And that's what needs to be investigated. Why did they not take the steps necessary to suppress an insurrection that put the lives of our elected officials, our whole continuity of government, including the vice president and his family and the Speaker of the House, at risk? And yet the president didn't even call the vice president. He didn't issue the command through the vice president, through the Secretary of Defense, acting Secretary of Defense, to the Secretary of the Army. Why did that not take place? I think those issues have to be examined, and certainly I think the truth will come out. There was no attempt by the president to do so because he didn't want to.
Well, you and all the other former defense secretaries wrote an op-ed last week about what your concerns are, and we've got 9 more days, and now we've seen the actions
Can I offer one
the Congress
comment on
moving
this?
towards impeachment. Yeah, we've got about 30 seconds left.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
The point I want to make is the 10 secretaries said, do not use the military in order to overturn the election. Stay out of the political system. The military is never delayed or deferred from using the military power to prevent an insurrection overrunning of the Capitol. And an old saying, even a dog knows when he's being tripped over or he's being kicked. And everyone knew this insurrection was not something that the 10 secretaries were writing about before. They were writing about, don't use our military to try to overturn elections through the invocation of martial law. And everybody should have understood that, including the President of the United States, the Secretary of Defense, and the Secretary of the Army.
Thank you very much. Thanks for putting all of that in context. As always, former Secretary of Defense William Cohen. Thank you for coming on today. And that does it for this edition.